My fiancé said, "I'm charging you rent now. This is my apartment too." An apartment I bought before we ever met. I replied, "Interesting proposal." Then I had her served with a real lease, $3, 200/month, first last deposit. When reality hit, I 34 male work in commercial construction management. My entire job revolves around contracts, timelines, and people trying to get more than they paid for. I spend my days dealing with disputes, entitlement, and the fine print people swear they didn't realize mattered. I never thought those same skills would be tested inside my own home. I bought my apartment when I was 29. Two-bedroom condo in a decent part of the city. Not flashy, not luxury, but clean, quiet, and stable. Fixed-rate mortgage. My name only on the deed. No cosigner. No family money. I worked overtime for years, skipped vacations, drove the same old car, and said no to a lot of things other people said yes to. That apartment wasn't just a place to live. It was proof that I could build something solid by myself. Years later, I met my fiancé, 32F. When we started dating, my life was already pretty settled. She knew from the beginning that the apartment was mine. She even used to joke about how grown-up it felt compared to bouncing between rentals like most of her friends. At first, she admired it. After about a year and a half together, we talked about moving in. No pressure, no ultimatum. We agreed she'd move into my place. I didn't ask her for rent. I wasn't trying to be generous or controlling, I just didn't think charging my partner rent made sense when I was paying the mortgage anyway. She insisted she'd contribute in other ways. Utilities, groceries, and some furniture upgrades. That seemed fair. Adult. Balanced. For the first few months, it was normal. Learning routines. Adjusting to each other's habits. Minor disagreements about dishes or thermostat settings. Nothing unusual. The first warning sign didn't come as a fight. It came as a joke. We were standing in the kitchen one afternoon, just talking about work and weekend plans, when she said casually, "You know, this is my apartment too now." I laughed and said, "It's our home." She shook her head and said, "No, I mean legally. I live here. I should have more say." The word legally stuck with me, but I brushed it off. People say strange things sometimes. I didn't want to overthink it, but after that, the comments didn't stop. They evolved. She started calling my home office the spare room. Suggested I move my desk because we might need that space later. Told friends she'd basically moved into a place she owns half of. When I corrected her once in front of friends, lightly, she laughed it off. Later that night, she told me I embarrassed her and made her feel small. That became the pattern. If I corrected her version of reality, I was insensitive or controlling. If I stayed quiet, her version became louder and more confident. She started making decisions without asking, rearranging furniture that mattered to me, talking about repainting walls, referring to my mortgage as our investment. When I slowed things down, she framed it as a trust issue. "Why are you so afraid of commitment?" became a common line. Then came the night everything changed. She leaned against a counter, arms crossed, voice calm in a way that felt rehearsed. "I've been thinking," she said. "You should start paying me rent." I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She explained that since she lived there, contributed, and planned to marry me, it was only fair. She said I made more money. That I was building equity while she wasn't. That she was effectively helping me grow wealth while getting nothing in return. She framed it as equality. I asked her to repeat it. She did. Without hesitation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain ownership laws. I just said, "Interesting proposal." She smiled like she'd won something, hugged me, told me she was proud of us for being mature about finances. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney. I laid everything out. Sole ownership. No rent history. No written agreement. Her contributions limited to living expenses. He listened carefully and then said something that hit hard. "You don't have a housing problem," he said. "You have an entitlement problem. And entitlement only gets worse without boundaries." He explained my options clearly. If she wanted to be treated like a tenant, that came with tenant responsibilities. Lease. rent, deposits, notice periods, consequences, or she could move out with proper notice. That week, her behavior escalated fast. She started talking openly about adding her name to the deed after marriage, like it was already decided. Mentioned her mother thought it was strange that I hadn't already done it. Started framing my hesitation as fear of commitment rather than basic financial sense. Then one evening I came home and found my office door locked. My laptop and work files were inside. "We need to talk about boundaries," she said, holding the keys. That moment changed how I saw her. This wasn't about fairness or partnership. This was about leverage. I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I printed the lease my attorney prepared. A standard residential lease. Market rent. First month, last month, and security deposit. My name as landlord. Hers as tenant. I left it on the kitchen table. She flipped through it and exploded when she saw the rent amount. Said I was trying to scare her. Said no one who loved her would do this. Accused me of financial abuse and power plays. I told her she didn't have to sign it. She could move out, and I'd give her legal notice. That's when the threat started. She said she'd tell everyone what kind of man I was. Called her mother loudly from the living room. Posted vague stuff online about love turning transactional and men using money to control women. I didn't respond. I documented everything. With my attorney's help, I gave her a written 30-day notice to vacate. Exactly what the law required. She accused me of illegally evicting her. I explained the difference between notice and eviction. She didn't care. The next few weeks were miserable. She stopped paying utilities she'd agreed to cover. Canceled the internet without telling me, which directly affected my work. Labeled food in the fridge with sticky notes. Hid my keys. Moved things and claimed she didn't remember. One night, I came home and found a guy sitting on my couch, shoes off, beer in hand. She said he was staying a few nights. I said no. She said tenants can have guests. I called my attorney on speaker. He calmly explained that unauthorized occupants could hurt her legal position even as an at-will resident. The guy left immediately. She screamed at him for being weak. A few days later, HR my job called me in. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint accusing me of financial coercion. I walked in with documentation. Deed. Lease draft. Notice. Timeline. Screenshots. The meeting lasted 10 minutes. HR closed it. She denied filing it. Said people talk. Then, about a week before her notice expired, I came home and found the deadbolt changed. She stood inside like she'd won. I called the police. Not to escalate, just to document. I showed the officer the deed and notice. He told her she couldn't lock out the legal owner. She unlocked the door. After that, she tried filing an emergency protective order claiming emotional distress and housing insecurity. It was denied the same day. 2 days before her notice expired, she filed a claim herself, without an attorney, saying she had an ownership interest because of contributions and intent to marry. Groceries. Decor. Emotional support. No mortgage payments. No receipts. The judge dismissed it quickly. On the last day of her notice, she refused to leave. Just sat there, daring me to act. The next business day, I filed for unlawful detainer. Formal eviction. No drama. She moved out before the hearing. Left the ring on the counter. Months later, her attorney sent a demand letter accusing me of wrongful eviction and emotional distress. We responded with documentation and filed for declaratory judgment to permanently shut down future claims. Her attorney withdrew shortly after. I refinanced the apartment. Lower rate. Shorter term. Rented out the second bedroom legally. The space she tried to control started paying me back. I sold the ring and paid off a loan. Last I heard, she tells people she escaped a toxic situation. I don't correct it. What I learned is simple. Entitlement mistakes generosity for weakness. Boundaries don't ruin relationships, they expose them. If you made it all the way through this without trying to charge me emotional rent, subscribe. The next lease only requires self-respect, and that deposit is non-refundable.